So thank you everyone again for joining us today. My name is Ashley Serco and I'm a speech language pathologist with the Toronto District School Board. I've worked with children as a speech pathologist for the last 5 years and just started with the board last year. And my colleague Pyle will also be presenting, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Pyle Burnham, and like my colleague Ashley, I have been working at the board for about 4 years and have about 6 years of experience in the field. My current role in the board is providing services to children with autism, but prior to being on the autism services team, I worked with a lot of students with language and literacy-based concerns in the school setting. So welcome everyone.
Yeah, so today the topic of our presentation is called Connecting and Communicating: How to Help Kids with the Language of Their Feelings. So this presentation primarily focuses on children from kindergarten to grade 6. So we'd love to hear about our audience and learn a little bit about you out there. If you're open to it, we'd love for you to type the grade that your child is in. Type the grade in the chat that your child is attending school this year. And we'll have a look and see. Okay, we have someone with a child in grade 8.
Okay. Wow.
Grade 7.
Grade 10. Okay, so we do have some parents here with children in the higher grades for sure. Grade 4.
And so though the focus is for the younger grades that I mentioned, so JK, a lot of the concepts we'll talk about could be adapted for kids that are older as well. I'd say the basic principles still apply. We might need to get a little bit creative in giving you ideas about how to implement for some of the older kids that you are caregivers and parents for. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing that. So let's find out what this presentation is about today. Here's some of the topics that we're going to touch on, a bit of a roadmap for our presentation. So the big focus is going to be on the topic of social emotional learning. We're going to learn how to notice, name, and respond to your child's feelings. And we're going to help children to learn new feeling words, expand their vocabulary, improve their vocabulary within the everyday activities that they're already doing. So I'm just going to start off by explaining social emotional learning. This may be a word that you've heard your child's teacher use, or perhaps you've heard in other parent or literature. And it's being addressed in all aspects of the curriculum in school, in math and gym, for example, to name a few. And it is key to your child's learning. So we're going to explain more about it as we go. So let's start off with an example. We're going to play a video clip from the movie Inside Out. So I'm going to give you some context to the clip if you haven't seen the movie. I'll explain what's going on with the different characters. So in this clip, this family sitting at the dinner table has just moved from Minnesota to California, and moving is a stressful event for the whole family. So we have 3 characters in this clip. Riley is the little girl. She's feeling homesick and sad. And while at the same time, her parents are asking her to be happy and think about the good things about their new home. Each of these 3 family members, you'll see, have colorful little characters inside their brains that represent different emotions. So there'll be a little red character inside the mom's brain, a little red character inside the dad's brain, a little red character inside the child's brain. And the red one, for example, is anger. And there will be different colored characters inside their brain, which are meant to represent different feelings. And some of the other different feelings that are represented are disgust, joy, sadness, and fear. So we'll watch the clip and we'll notice how stress can trigger some of the big reactions that they have as they eat dinner together. So. Can you hear it?
So Ashley, before you share your screen, make sure you just check off share sound.
Okay, let me try again.
Yeah.
Here we go.
You pretend to be Joy.
What? Okay.
It was fine, I guess. I don't know. Oh, very smooth. That was just like Joy.
Something is definitely going on.
She's never acted like this before. What should we do? We're gonna find out what's happening, but we'll need support. Signal the husband. Ahem.
With a nice pass over to Reed, comes across that right.
Uh-oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
What? Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening.
Is it garbage night? We left the toilet seat up. What? What is it, woman? What?
He's making that stupid face again.
I could strangle him right now.
Signal him again.
Ah, so, Riley, how was school?
Gotta be kidding me.
For this, we gave up that Brazilian helicopter pilot?
Boo! I'll be Joy.
School was great, all right?
Riley, is everything okay?
Sir, she just rolled her eyes at us.
What is her deal? All right, make a show of force. I don't want to have to put the foot down.
No, not the foot.
Riley, I do not like this new attitude.
Oh, I'll show you attitude.
No.
Stay happy.
What is your problem? Just leave me alone.
Sir, reporting high levels of sass.
Take it to DEFCON 2.
You heard that, gentlemen? DEFCON 2.
Listen, young lady, I don't know where this disrespectful attitude came from. You want a piece of this, Pops? Come and get it!
Yeah, well,
Here it comes. Prepare the foot.
Keys to second position. Ready to launch on your command, sir.
just shut up!
Fire! That's it. Go to your room. Now.
Foot is down. The foot is down.
Good job, gentlemen. That could have been a disaster.
Well, that was a disaster.
Just give me a second here to get readjusted. Okay, thank you for your patience. I got a couple of slides ahead of myself, so I'm just going to backtrack. Oh. Okay, my computer is very slow. Did you want to add something, Pyle? Or are you just going to help me out?
Yeah, so we had, I think Denise shared a comment in the chat. So she said, I'm glad you showed this clip, because how do we really get to emotions when, when I guess our children are showing such disrespect? So I think it's more of a question. So hopefully, as we move through our presentation, hopefully we are able to answer that question for you. But Denise, we can definitely discuss that at the end of the presentation a little bit more too, if you have any specific details. But let's get through our presentation, and then we're happy to address any specific questions.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you, Pyle, for keeping an eye on the chat. So yeah, we can see Denise makes a good point. Everyone is stressed in this situation, and we can see how everyone reacts and responds differently. And it can be hard to know the right way to respond, especially when you're also trying to parent on top of managing your emotions and your child's emotions as well. And so it sounds like also this maybe this clip got you thinking about how your children react when they're upset or feeling big emotions. Are they able to use their words to express that? Are they naming their feelings and talking about it? Or are they someone that tends to avoid talking about their feelings? Or do they bottle their feelings up inside and sort of release them all at one time in anger? So everyone is different, and your children the best and how they react when they're feeling big emotions. Before we delve a little bit deeper, we just wanted to take a moment to talk about using these strategies and using the approach we're going to talk about in your home language and why that's important. So a lot of what we talk about today does not mean, just because we're presenting in English does not mean it needs to be used in English. So we encourage families to use their home language for many reasons. It allows you as the caregiver to communicate in the language you're most comfortable with. It allows your family to keep an important part of your heritage. And it helps your children learn English at school by continuing to use your language at home. So it gives the child sort of a base home language to build English on top of as they go through school, as they go through the school system. And we wanted to acknowledge and value the differences among cultures and languages when talking about your feelings. And please take what you need from this presentation and leave the rest, because some of us find talking about our feelings comes easily, while others don't find that it comes as easily, and that's okay. So the first part of the roadmap that I showed at the beginning of the presentation had this word social emotional learning, or SEL. So we're going to show another video clip from the School of Mental Health Ontario website to see how they describe SEL, social emotional learning. So let's have a look. They're going to explain it better than I could. And I'm going to stop and reshare and make sure that share sound is connected. Okay.
One of the most powerful evidence-based tools is social emotional learning, or SEL. SEL is the process of learning and developing skills to recognize and manage emotions, cope with stress, strengthen identity, solve problems, enhance positive relationships, and think critically. Research shows that when students engage in high-quality SEL at school, those results are significant. Moreover, participation in SEL leads to strong gains in academic achievement. SEL also has a cumulative effect. When all students in a class or school learn and practice these skills, their sense of belonging within the classroom, school, and community improves. Everyone tends to communicate in more positive and thoughtful ways, and they show respect for diversity of thought, culture, language, faith, identities, and expression. Educator reflection about the learning environment, with opportunities for input from students and families, is a critical part of culturally responsive instruction and assessment. There are many approaches to support SEL at school. One of the most well-known resources is the foundational work of the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. We adapted it for easier implementation in Ontario schools. Consider how to weave these 6 SEL skill categories into everyday classroom practice. 1. Self-awareness and sense of identity. 2. Identifying and managing emotions. 3. Stress management and coping. 4. Positive motivation and perseverance. 5. Relationship skills. 6. Critical and creative thinking skills or executive functions.
Okay.
One of the most powerful evidence-based.
Okay, so that video went by with a lot of information. It went by sort of quickly, but I think the takeaway points that we want to emphasize from that is that learning about socializing with other children and learning about our feelings and emotions, especially for children. When I say our, I mostly mean our children's. We can see children thrive at school and at home. And we can do all of this while also learning about one's own cultural identity and the cultural differences of others and responding to those differences with a focus on the gifts that each child brings to the situation. And the video talks about 6 different skills that can be developed so that kids can develop their social emotional learning skills. And in this presentation, we're only going to focus on one because we want the information that you hear today to hopefully be practical and give you a way to respond and interact with your children right away today when you leave the presentation or in the coming days ahead. So even though each of the 6 skills mentioned in the video are important, we are going to focus on the one, and we are going to focus specifically on how to make communication skills strong. Because we are speech language pathologists, our focus is on how to develop those communication skills so that your children can have the words to express their feelings and as a way to help them cope with stress. Okay, so as I said, we're going to focus on how to deal with feelings. So today we're gonna say the 3 words: notice, name, and respond quite a bit through the presentation. And these are 3 words. A little acronym, I guess, NNR, that we hope will stick in your head so that you remember kind of the steps to work through helping your child express themselves in an emotionally charged or emotionally positive even situation. So first we have to notice that the child is having a feeling. Notice or realize that they are feeling something that you can observe. Then we need to name it. So we'll give the child a word for it. We'll have a word for that feeling. And then we're going to respond in a certain way to that feeling. Children are not only asked to develop this understanding about their own feelings, But we ask them to understand and respond to the feelings of others all day long as well. That's an important skill to develop, is to notice and name and respond to the feelings of other children. Together with our children, we can show and practice responding to others with compassion or kindness while honoring their social and cultural identities. And this process is difficult for many children, and in the video it mentioned practice. So these skills come with practice and lots of reinforcement, and it's difficult can be difficult not only for children but adults as well. Again, our focus is going to be on developing the strong talking and listening skills that children need to respond in these situations. So let's start with noticing when we're having a feeling. It's a great way to help our kids notice their feeling. A great way to help our kids notice their feelings is to talk about how feelings affect their body. So, for example, if your child is experiencing stress or anxiety, you might start to notice out loud what you're seeing that makes you realize that. So you might say, I see your shoulders are tense and you're rubbing your forehead. You often do that when you're feeling stress or anxiety. Or you can model or talk about how stress feels in your own body. So I can feel a headache coming on with stress from work, or I've been sitting too long at my computer. Maybe I should take a break and go for a walk for 5 minutes. So speaking in this way about how your own body is feeling shows your child that you're connecting with your feelings in your own body, and then you're giving an idea of what you do to cope. So going for a walk, taking a break. And it's not just about those stressful or negative feelings. It's great to point out happy responses as well. So for example, I see your great smile and your body looks relaxed. Or you cannot hide your big smile and your feet are dancing. Are you feeling thrilled or excited? So giving a little bit of a definition instead of just saying, are you feeling excited? Really explaining how you know what that looks like so that they develop those skills in noticing as well. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, talking about how to notice feelings in our bodies can be done in your own language and at ways that feel natural to you and that fit your own culture. So the scripts that I'm saying are just ideas that we've come up with, but you might, you want to say it in a way that feels natural for your own voice. The next N in NNR is about naming. So that's a big part of our job, is helping children to develop their vocabularies. And words for emotions are very important, functional words that kids can learn to help improve their mental health and well-being, their friendships and relationships with family, and it helps them become better readers and writers because they're understanding the language of emotions when they're looking at stories and able to write with more vocabulary their own stories. In English, we have many words for happy, sad, mad, and scared. For example, we could say disappointed, upset, gloomy, miserable as a way of describing that we're sad. So we encourage modeling many different feeling words rather than just focusing kind of on the common ones, happy, sad, mad. Having a range of vocabulary to describe those feelings is going to help your child pinpoint them a little bit better. So let's, one activity that you might want to try is if you go to your local hardware store, you can write feeling words on the different paint chips, and the lighter colors would represent smaller feelings, and the darker the darker colors, you would write the bigger feelings on to explain. So for example, ecstatic would be a more intense feeling, and therefore written on the darker purple than just happy. Or terrified is a stronger feeling than worried. So this idea just sort of gives your child a visual of the different degrees of feelings that you can have, and how diverse those feelings can be and the words for them can be. Okay, I'm just being mindful of time, Pyle. Do you think you'll still have time for your portion if I play this video, or should I skip it?
I mean, you could play it like maybe like just a little bit of it, maybe like 30 seconds and.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
What kind of special dance are you going to do?
What's the dance about?
Okay, so I'm just going to explain what the video is. It shows kids how feelings can be communicated without words. So we have to use our eyes to figure out a child's emotions. So let's just watch quickly how the characters in this video communicate their feelings through dance. And as you watch the video, think about you and your own child and what they'll do to communicate their emotions without words.
Yes.
What kind of special dance are you going to do?
What's the dance about feelings, Elmo?
Oh, sounds very emotional. Hey, Elmo knows. Let's see if Elmo can guess what feelings they're dancing about. Oh, and you can guess too. Music maestro! Happy! That looks like a happy dance. Maybe they missed their friends.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there just in the interest of time, but I wanted to get 2 examples of how the video is communicating emotion without anyone saying anything. I mean, Elmo is narrating and telling us what the emotions are for learning, but we can see so many different ways that emotion is communicated without any of the words. So they change the color of the background, the music gets faster and lighter, and the way they move their bodies, looking at their facial expressions, we can see they're happy. And then all of those same things kind of change to express a different emotion. So you can, while watching something like this, point out similar things to your child, the nonverbal cues to your child that show emotion. So while you're playing, if your child is having fun, you might say, "Oh, I see you're smiling. Playing on the slide is so much fun. Are you happy?" So pointing out that they're smiling and explaining that you think they're happy because you see that they're smiling. And then the last part of our NNR acronym is talking about how to respond. So you can notice and name your child's feelings, but then this part of the presentation gives more ideas of what you can do to respond. And I'm going to hand it over to Pyle to pull up her own screen and continue this portion of the presentation.
Okay, can everyone see my screen okay?
So Pyle, I just see your speaker's notes.
Oh, okay. 1 second, let's see. 1 second. Just going to. Can you see it now?
Yep, so I can see the slides.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Thank you for your patience, everyone. So like my colleague Ashley discussed in the beginning of this presentation about noticing, naming, and responding to feelings, now we're just going to talk about some examples that you can do with your children at home in everyday activities and how you can really think about noticing, naming, and responding to some of these feelings and emotions that we are trying to get them to understand and get them to learn. So a really nice way to really incorporate noticing and naming feelings is by reading stories with your children. So many stories, they will not say what the characters are feeling, but you can help your kids make smart guesses about those characters' feelings by talking about what might be happening in the story, maybe looking at their body language and seeing what that tells you, or maybe even just looking at their facial expressions and determining what they might be feeling in that scene or in that moment. For those of you who may not have access to a lot of picture books or stories at home, you can always access books for free through the Toronto Public Library Network. And in order to borrow these books, of course, you would need a library card. And if you don't have access to a library card, you could go to any Toronto Public Library with a photo ID that has a proof of address and register for one. And if you're looking for more information about that, you can always go to the Toronto Public Library website. There is a lot of information provided there, and it's also translated into various languages in case English is not your first language. Okay, so just going back to the idea of reading stories with your children. So here I have an example from this story, The Pigeon Has to Go to School. So if you were reading this story with your child and wanting to notice and name feelings in the book, you could say something like, oh, look, the pigeon is making a lot of excuses why he should not go to school. Look, his wings are shaking. I don't think he really wants to go to school. Maybe he's feeling nervous or scared. So in this example, you're kind of bringing attention to the body language of the pigeon or what he's doing in the image. So in this case, he's flapping his wings or he's shaking his wings. And then you're naming or kind of identifying that feeling of how he might be feeling. So in this case, he might be feeling nervous or scared, which is why he's flapping his wings. So this is something that you can also do when you're reading stories with your children by really looking at the characters, their body language, their facial expressions, the situation that they're in, and really talk about the feelings that these characters might be experiencing. Here's another great book that talks about characters' feelings. It's called On's Anger, and it's by Gail Silger. In this book, On gets angry with his grandfather when his grandfather asks him to stop building his tower and to come in and sit for dinner. On explodes in anger, and his grandfather teaches On to sit with his anger and recognize that anger is part of all of us. So this is a great book that you could read with your children that works on naming feelings, as On experiences a lot of feelings throughout this story. If you are reading this book, we would probably suggest that you pick 2 or 3 feeling words to talk about and then explain when you're reading the story based on your child's language knowledge. So for example, you may choose more simplistic feeling words such as happy, upset, sad, angry, if your child has an early language knowledge or is, an early language learner. And then if your child is has more advanced language skills or has more advanced language knowledge, then you could probably use more sophisticated feeling vocabulary, such as overwhelmed or exasperated, bewildered, or miserable. Okay, so really kind of take a look at, where your child's language level is at to determine what scale of feeling words you might be using when you're talking about the story. So when you're trying to explain vocabulary or feeling vocabularies to kids, it's really important that we think about using kid-friendly definitions or using a kid-friendly way of describing feelings, especially because many children may not know what those words mean. And so having discussions by asking them what the word means to them, or by really breaking down or simplifying the definitions of these words will help the feelings come to life. So for example, with upset, you might say something like, it's a feeling you get when something happens that you do not like. And most children would be able to relate to that, right? Most children understand when they don't like something, and they understand that, you know, they might cry or get angry or frustrated or sad or upset, right? So that's a nice way of, you know, putting it and simplifying that definition for a child who might have some early language skills. But what if you had a word, something such as overwhelmed, which is a little bit more of a higher level feeling vocabulary? If you were to ask your child to look this word up in a dictionary, they would really come up with definitions that are quite abstract and don't really speak to what that word means. So some dictionary definition examples of the word overwhelmed are overcome means it's overcome by numbers or force, so it kind of uses a word in the definition, or completely overcome or overpowered by thought or feeling. So even after looking at these two dictionary definitions, many children still may not understand what overwhelmed means. And I think I can speak from experience because I was working on vocabulary with a high school student. And even when I asked her to look up words in the dictionary, she still didn't seem to really understand the word and wasn't really able to use it in context of, you know, a writing assignment or even in a discussion or presentation. So really needing to really thinking about how we can simplify these definitions, or how we can make these definitions more kid-friendly or child-friendly or at your child's language level is really, really important. So in this example of overwhelmed, you might say, or you might simplify it to it meaning that it means when things are happening all at once, or a feeling you get when you can't handle it all. So those definitions might be a little bit more relatable and will also have vocabulary or words that your children are more able to understand. So remember when Ashley did speak to our acronym, the NNR, or the Notice, Name, and Respond, you know, we do talk about, when we're thinking about responding, we think about expected versus unexpected behaviors. So with Aunt's Anger, this is also a great book to talk about when a behavior can be unexpected. So let's take a look at a couple of pages to show you what I mean. So in the left, you know, we have a picture of grandfather who's calling it on in for dinner. And grandfather expects On to stop playing and come in for dinner. And in the right, we have a picture of On crying, but grandfather even expects that On might be sad sometimes when he has to stop playing. And I think many of us can understand that and relate to that, because, you know, when we have our own children and we take them away from something that they're really enjoying or an activity of interest, you know, they are likely to be a little bit sad or upset or may, you know, say, no, I want to play a little bit longer, right? So I think we've all hopefully have all experienced things like that. But in On's anger in this story, what grandfather does not expect is On exploding in anger. And this reaction is really unexpected. Okay, so, and I really like how this story shows how unexpected On's reaction is, but what's even more important is how On's grandfather responds to this anger. He teaches On that anger is a feeling we all have sometimes, and we can work through it. So On's grandfather, he doesn't really scold his angry feelings. You know, he himself doesn't get frustrated, and he himself doesn't retaliate. But rather, you know, he tells On that it's okay to have those feelings. You know, we can really work through it. He doesn't scold him. He, you know, takes more of a calmer approach to really handling On's anger. So hopefully this example helps us to, you know, or reminds us to be more mindful of how we should be thinking about our own children's anger and frustrations as well. So when we're thinking about responding to feelings and when we're thinking about the unexpected, right? So we talked about the expected versus unexpected behaviors. It's really important to put unexpected in context because many children, when they hear unexpected, they generally associate it with a negative event or an angry outburst because usually in the context that we do use unexpected, that's usually how we use it. But it's really important that we also provide our kids with some more lighthearted or positive or surprising or funny examples of how the word unexpected is used. So for example, in a conversation, you might say, "Oh, I got a letter in the mail from Auntie Alexa. That was really unexpected. How exciting." So really putting the term unexpected in the context, in a positive context, or in a context that's not really associated with a negative event, but rather a more funny or surprising reaction or a surprising event, is really important to help our children understand that unexpected isn't always something bad. It can also be a positive event as well. So here is something else to remember. So when kids learn new words, their ability to understand words often comes before their ability to say the word. And it generally takes our kids time to learn and use new words in speaking as well as in writing. And after using the words across many different situations and many different people, that's only when they're able to really develop that deeper understanding or that deeper meaning of the word. And so we really need to be mindful of the amount of vocabulary we're exposing our children to, but also how often and how frequently we're using those words in our everyday routines and our everyday activities, as well as even in school. So another great way to talk about feelings is in oral storytelling. So we talked about how speaking about naming and noticing and naming feelings is great in reading, but also in oral storytelling. Many families share stories that have been passed down orally from one generation to the next. And many of these stories are designed to teach important lessons and guide children's actions in respectful and in ways that support the community. So these stories invite a lot of opportunities to talk about feelings and learn new words in the same ways we use our storybooks. Some families tend to create their own stories and other families can take part in creating different parts, but it's really important that we also use feeling words in our stories to allow for students to or children to be able to hear some of those feeling words multiple times, and also to allow them multiple opportunities to hear that word and help develop that deeper meaning of the word, like I was saying before. Another point to remember is that kids love to listen to the same stories over and over. I have an 18-month-old daughter at home, and I know one of her favorite books is this book about dogs. And no matter where I hide it in the house, she always manages to find it and always insists on reading it every night, even though she has a whole library of books. It's still her go-to book to read every night. And it's okay if your child wants to read the same books. Sometimes we might think that, we're just limiting them to that one book and they're not really exploring, other stories, other characters, other topics that these books that, we have, but it's okay. And like I said, children learn new words through multiple exposures. They need to hear them repeatedly in order to really develop that foundational knowledge of what that word is, what that word means, and how to use that word in a specific context. So reading or listening many times to the same stories helps your child hear that word many times in different situations and thus develop that deeper meaning of that vocabulary. So it's okay if your child wants to read that same book over and over again, and you should let them. So a third way to really talk about feelings words is in watching maybe a TV show or movie with your children. You can really pause those videos and talk about the situations and the feelings of the characters in the scene. You can also notice the characters' body language, their facial expressions as clues to how they might be feeling and engage in a discussion of that. And you could also play a movie for a minute or two and then, pause it after a minute and kind of talk about how the characters might be feeling, or comment on, how you think they might be feel, or, what you might do in that situation, how that would make you feel, right? So engaging in these rich conversations that incorporate a lot of feeling words can really help facilitate more understanding of the feelings and emotions that you're trying to help your child not only to notice and name, but also to respond to. And really working through that together, it all makes it all the more better. And even with the activity that you're doing, so with the TV watching or watching the movie, it's such a naturalistic activity that many children will probably not even notice that you are trying to teach them something. So, you aren't really doing activity where it requires them to sit and, learn. It's something that's very naturalistic and can be done on the couch in a natural way. So let's just circle back to the movie Inside Out and Riley's big feelings that we saw earlier.
Kyle, can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Sure, yeah.
I just wanted to give some ideas because a lot of the parents said their children were a bit older than the age range we said.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of these same concepts that we've been talking about can be applied, but more in an age appropriate way. So a lot of these materials that we're talking about are the materials are focused on younger kids, but if you have someone in later elementary, or if you have a child in high school, some ideas of how you can apply this might be reading the news together, talking about a news event, and again, naming how the people involved in that news event might feel. So if you're reading a story about how a family won the lottery, you might say, oh, or you see a picture of them in the story, like, I noticed these people have a big smile on their face, probably because they're holding a check for $18 million. I bet they feel elated. So that might be a more age-appropriate example. Watching videos, so you may watch movies with your child, and again, at the end, having a discussion about certain scenes that might be appropriate for you to talk about emotions around. Or maybe if you're even watching TikTok videos with your teen or your child, like a lot of them are pranks. So stopping the TikTok video. How do you think the parent feels that this child covered the car in shaving cream? I noticed that the mother's voice got really loud when she saw that happen. So thinking about how you can adapt about pointing these feelings out in contexts that are appropriate for your child based on their age and what you and your child do together.
Thanks, Ashley. Those were great examples. And even thinking about when you're reading books, right? Like even thinking about maybe like higher level novels that your child might be reading at this point, right? A lot of these novels don't really have pictures to go with them. So it just makes it all the more harder for our kids to really understand and pick out the feelings of the characters. So really kind of, maybe structuring those activities a little bit more, where maybe you read a couple of pages and try to contextualize what is happening in those few pages, and then talking about the character's feelings might also be helpful before moving on to reading the entire chapter or reading the entire book, to really help your child understand what's happening in the story. Okay, so like I said, going back to Riley's emotions, when we were watching that video clip earlier, Riley was so upset that she eventually ran away from home, and that's what happened. She finally faced her sad feelings and ran home to see her parents. She admitted to them that she was sad because she missed Minnesota, her friends there, and playing hockey there. So that was really the source of the anger that we saw in that initial clip. Her parents completely accepted her feelings and showed her that it was okay to feel sad. Her parents were great listeners in the end, and Riley learned to deal with her feelings by allowing them to be felt and then passed through. So, I mean, I know we spoke about noticing and naming feelings, in this presentation, but I think one of the key takeaways is also being able to respond to your children's feelings, and also for them to really respond to their own feelings, but how you respond to their feelings as well. And it's really about, helping them understand that it's okay to feel mad, angry, or frustrated, and helping them work through those feelings and come to terms with what has happened happened, or helping them calm down and let those feelings pass, whether it's by maybe talking it through, writing things down, maybe getting them to draw a picture and then talking about it afterwards, maybe just giving them some space initially, right? And maybe talking about it maybe later in the day or the next morning after, they've had some time to really reflect on those feelings. Those are some ways to really think about or really support your children's feelings, and helping them to work through those feelings and allowing them to feel what they're feeling. Okay, so just to wrap up our presentation, we can talk to our kids about a lot of feeling words, but that alone is not enough. So to increase their social emotional learning, we need to teach kids that all feelings are okay, and it's what we do with them that really matters. So throughout this presentation, we have been looking at supporting social emotional learning by helping children put words to their feelings. And we need to keep the children's language knowledge in mind, to be mindful of the language that we use to help guide our children towards healthy development of social emotional skills. So here is a resource, and I'll see if I click on it, I think it will show up a little bit bigger. Can everyone still see my screen? Yes. Okay, so this is a great resource. It includes some links to some important tip sheets on really about social emotional learning and emotional vocabulary, and how you can really use books to build that emotional vocabulary. There are also some video links that are provided here to social emotional learning that will really help you to get more information, as well as strategies on how you can really help your child at home with this feeling and emotion related vocabulary. And for those who do need some information about the Toronto Public Library, we have provided some information here on how you can access the library, get a library card, and some of what they have to offer. All right. Okay, just going back to our presentation. And yes, so that concludes our presentation. If you do have more questions about this topic, about social emotional learning, feel free to contact your school administrator to get more information about this topic. And also for those who are interested in revisiting or circling back to this presentation, like it was mentioned in the chat, it will be posted on the TDSB YouTube website, so you will have access to it there. But for those parents who also aren't sure who that contact person might be and who need some support in getting to the right person to really help you out, you can always contact our colleague Leanna Levinson, and she will be able to direct you to to the correct person on this. All right. And okay, thank you very much for being here. We have a few minutes for any questions. Just going back to, I think, Denise's point. Denise, were we able to answer a part of your question that you had put in the comments, or in the chat, actually, I should say?
No, I think that, I think it was a great presentation, but I'm still lost on, when you see the disrespect, do you name it? Or like, do you just go into what are you feeling? Because it's hard to ignore someone who's being
disrespectful. Yeah, I think maybe approaching it to approaching it by, after that action happens, kind of taking it from the perspective of the other. So the person that, it may be disrespectful to, and helping that student or child notice how it makes the other person feel. And then kind of circling back to, their feelings, or, their understanding of, what they're doing and how that impacts the other person. I think that might be a good place to start. It is definitely tricky because, the child who is doing something disrespectful may not recognize how it impacts the other person and how that may make them feel. So maybe thinking about it in that situation. I don't know if that helps.
Okay.
And then also maybe highlighting to the child or the student that a better way to respond. So noticing their feelings, naming them, and then saying like, you responded by calling me a name and that really hurt my feelings. Perhaps before you if you're feeling this way, you can go and take a break and come back and talk to me, but I won't accept you calling me names because that hurts my feelings. So sort of trying to offer them a different way to respond, and pointing out that it's not acceptable to disrespect
And
your
this is also
parent or your friend or that sort of thing.
Right. And then this is also a good place to kind of tie in how like the respondings, like the expected versus unexpected behaviors, right? So, helping the child really understand, what could be an expected response to that disrespectful behavior to help them differentiate between the two, and then kind of incorporating or tying in the feeling vocabulary with that. I think that might also be helpful for the child to really understand the consequences of their actions.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
And then we have another question in the chat from Marie. One based on what we were just discussing, what would you suggest if the child is knowingly disrespectful? So it sounds like you feel like the child is
doing it on purpose almost.
Yeah. Perhaps, would it be fair to say perhaps to hurt you or to hurt somebody else?
Yep.
So I think there might be an underlying reason for their actions. And I think, I guess trying to dig deeper and trying to get to the bottom of it might be a little bit tricky, but have you maybe collected some data on the behavior to kind of see if there are any patterns? I don't know who the person was, but so maybe like collecting some data on the behavior to see if there are any patterns to some of those behaviors, just to kind of determine that underlying cause or the underlying reason of why that is happening. Is it for attention? Is it for is it because the child doesn't really like somebody in the class, or is it the activity? Just trying to understand what that underlying reason might be for that behavior, to really kind of get to why that child might be doing that behavior, and then kind of talking about the feelings aspect of it.
And then there's just one more question. I think we can take the next 3 minutes to answer, and then we'll wrap up. Just in the chat about in the current social media movie climate, kids are being exposed to very mature content. What do you suggest parents do to talk to their kids if they're watching graphic content without permission, like Halloween horror movies, Squid Game, etc.? So again, taking that opportunity to, trying to use our framework still of noticing and naming and responding. So I'm not sure I have any suggestions about how to prevent them from watching it necessarily, but if they do happen to be exposed, like naming how that child feels when they watch it, like, like notice how you're kind of sweating or you're kind of shaking when you're watching that video clip. Like you must be feeling really scared right now, and trying to frame it in a way that to avoid those things, like your body is not ready to handle watching stuff like this. You're too young to see things like this. And you can see the effect that it's having on your feelings and how your body feels when you watch something like this. So that's sort of trying to fit it within the framework of what we're chatting about here, about communicating feelings and feeling words. I'm not sure if Pyle had anything to add to that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about maybe just asking your child like what they're understanding from the show that they're watching, right? So, what happened in that show? How did that make you feel? I think if you understand what your child is watching and how they understand this show, and you understand what they're watching from their perspective, I think will help you to kind of respond to some of their feelings a little bit more. So if they're watching something and they're not quite understanding what's going on in the show, then, that's a good point of, maybe this is a little bit higher level for you, and we need to kind of find something that might be a little bit more age appropriate. Like kind of thinking about also, the child's language level. Like, are these shows using higher level vocabulary that your child understands and is able to make out, what's actually happening, right? Because a lot of these shows you may show, very complex scenes that have multiple plots and multiple storylines, and the child may only pick up on one versus the whole picture. And so I think getting a better understanding of what their take is on the show, and then talking it through as to how they feel about this show and whether that might be appropriate for them might be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so thank you everyone for being here. We really hope you enjoyed the presentation and were able to take away a few things from today. Like I said, this presentation will be available on the TDSB YouTube website. So please, feel free to take a look there if you'd like to revisit some of the points that were made from today's presentation. But otherwise, we really hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and take care. Have a great afternoon. Oh, just one point actually. Did many of us leave already? If you would like access to this resource that we mentioned, or that we did show you on our during this presentation, please feel free to leave your email in the chat, and we'll be happy to email it out to you. Thank you.